Hello, everyone. So, it's been an interesting news day. It's been an interesting last few days, to be honest. So, I read this article today online that's it's from a U.S. think tank. And in this think tank, there's retired FBI, CIA, military officials, retired police officials, and they're all coming to the same conclusion that military vets want to overthrow the government. As a military vet, I happen to know a lot of military members, quite a few actually. And I can tell you 100% that no military vet wants to overthrow the government. How do I know this? Because we're loyal people to our nation. That's why we're willing to die for our nation. See, when you join the military, that's what you're literally signing up for. You're willing to put your life on the line for the sake of your nation. So when I see articles about veterans trying to start a white ethno state, someone actually said that. That's deeply insulting to me and the veteran community. In my 20 plus years while serving in the Canadian military, I have yet to stumble across a white nationalist, a white supremacist, a neo-Nazi, anyone of that nature. And you know why? If someone was one of those types of people, they would be quickly dealt with through unofficial means, I believe, and my own personal experiences. I have worked with people from every nationality, every religious belief, every skin tone. I have worked with people from all over the world who came to Canada and were willing to die and fight for Canada. And I find it deeply insulting that my government, the Canadian government, thinks that veterans are trying to overthrow the country. I'm going to explain something to you that your government won't. There was a guy, retired RCMP. Oh, God, I'm terrible at names. Anyway, he was retired RCMP, and he did all these Access Information Act requests. It'll come to me. Brain injury, right? Memory is kind of piss poor. That's really going to bother me now. But anyway, and he would do Access Information Act requests. And what he would do is he would ask, for example, he asked how many guns were stolen from the RCMP in the military. The answer, over 500. Over 500 weapons. Stolen, just gone. To me, that's an issue. But to the government, it doesn't seem to be an issue. These are military-grade weapons, by the way. I wish I could remember his name. Young. Dennis R. Young. His website still exists. Unfortunately, he passed away last January. But one of the ones he did was he asked if the government of Canada had any statistics about basically what could the government get away with. And one of the Access Information Act requests we got, it was a study commissioned back in the 90s. And basically it was studying how many people could the Canadian government kill before the people would overthrow the government. I wish I was kidding. I've actually seen a copy of this. I once had a copy of this, but I lost it somewhere when I moved. The number was 58. The Canadian government figured they could kill 58 civilians before people would rise up and overthrow the government. It's a lot of people. It's a lot of people. I hope it never, ever, ever comes to this. Not that I don't trust my government, but I work for the government, and I have some idea how much corruption there is. And there's a lot of corruption. We'll talk about that another time. You know, I think some of the comments today, it was on MSN, the MSN homepage anyway. Some of the comments were like, well, just take the guns away from veterans. Sure you could. And they would get more. See, the veterans aren't the issue. There are veterans groups who stand up for and advocate advocate for veterans and veterans healthcare and things of that nature. It took me forever to see a neurosurgeon for my brain injury. Forever. I received next to no medical care for my brain injury, and I actually spent my own money on brain injury care because the government doesn't give me any, and I was never provided for any while serving in the military. I have a buddy of mine, weapons technician, was in Afghanistan, and a LAV got hit, light armored vehicle, ran over an IED. Everyone was killed. And his name was Rolly. He was actually my warrant officer at the weapons school many years ago. He's a good guy. And it was his job to crawl through the LAV, make safe the weapons on board, 25 mil, the C6, whatever else is in the vehicle he could find, before medics would try to get the people out. Rolly had to crawl through human soup. Some of the people were soup. I bumped into Rolly a few years after that, and he was a funny guy. He had a sense of humor, very outgoing, very ambitious. I bumped into him a few years later at the dog park, and he didn't recognize me. Because when I seen him, I was like, "Hey, Rolly, how you doing?" And his wife approached me. She's like, "He's not doing well." And I said, "Is he okay?" She's like, "No." And she told me that what happened to him overseas. And this man he was a good man, is just now a former shell of his human self, which is unfortunate. So the government has no issue and no problem sending people like Rolly to die for this country. But when they come back, the government believes that they're going to try to overthrow the government. That is 100% false. 100% false. You can get any group of people and convert them to whatever you want to, just in the media alone. I've been called a neo-Nazi, white supremacist. I don't know. I was married to a woman of color. I dated women of color. Best friend's Jewish. If I'm a neo-Nazi, I'm not a very good one. Not really a good one. And it kind of just makes me disgusted. It really does. That our government would just throw these labels on the people. Now, I am not pro big government. I like small governments. And governments, unfortunately, is one of those necessary evils that society must have. But respect for your government is a two-way street. If your government does not respect you, it's very hard to respect the people in power. Very hard. It's just when I see these articles, I feel like I've wasted the 20 plus years I served in the military if my government thinks so little of us. As I said, I've lost some good friends overseas. I was never deployed with the Canadian military. I never had a chance to. I'm in a small trade. I was in the wrong place at the wrong time. But I have a lot of friends who deployed. And they come back, they're not the same. I was at Tim Hortons in Gagetown one time. And Gagetown's a big combat unit base. And there's a Tim Hortons at the front gate at the Canex Mall. And after PT in the morning, you go there and you grab your coffee, right? Because that's what soldiers do. They grab coffee in the morning. And I'm in line one day to get my coffee, and one of the girls drops a coffee pot. And I was the only guy standing because a lot of the guys were fresh back from overseas, and they heard the bang smash, and they all went to the ground. And I'm like, oh. But now the government tries to vilify these people by calling them white nationalists, neo-Nazis. This is all in this article I seen today. I should see if I can find the link to it. It was really eye-opening to myself. I never thought I would see something like this in my lifetime. Never thought. And I know a lot of vets who think the same thing, that our government has literally poisoned the well. I know a lot of my friends still serving are now trying to leave the military, but the military makes it now very hard to leave. They lose your paperwork. The clerks are busy. They can't get around to it. When I released in January, my release clerk told me she had a stack of paper inches thick with just, release requests. We call them VORs. Has the government asked why everyone is leaving and why there's so much resentment towards the government? As I said, I know guys who come back missing parts of their body. I know guys who have serious traumatic injuries, brain injuries, emotional injuries. I know guys who've watched their friends disappear in front of them, turn into a pile of mush, putting guys in Ziploc bags. Those guys come back and they are not the same, but they did it because they love their country and they were sent to do it for the love of their country. And I think now the government's trying to divide everyone. And I've been around a long time. I've never seen so much division in our country. Is the government trying to do this on purpose? They can't be this inept. They can't be. There's no way they can be this inept. Are they trying to divide us on purpose? Do they want people angry and frustrated? You know, I seen today in one of the comments I mentioned earlier that what someone comments like, "Oh, just take all the gun licenses away from the vets." I have met guys who would take this little flashlight. It's an Innova LED flashlight, fantastic, and lights go up, and they could murder you with this. Do you think taking guns away from veterans solves anything? Do you think taking guns from anybody solves anything? Here in Canada, you're more likely to die of a car crash, cancer, diabetes. I go on and on. But I just don't like the fear mongering currently going on in the media. Every couple of days, it seems like there's a new threat, and veterans are of no threat to society, period. So these are some of the nicest people you'll meet in your life. I don't like the vilification of veterans because these guys do the dirty work of the federal government, and then they come back and suddenly they're like, "Oh, they're a threat to us. They're such a threat. Why did you send them to war? Why would you send these young men and women to war?" I have friends of mine who served in Afghanistan, who had to shoot children. I have friends of mine who seen the T-boy being passed around with the ANA. I have friends of mine that fired tank rounds in the mud huts, and it turned out it wasn't ISIS in there. It wasn't, some rebel group. It's a woman and her kid. But they were told to shoot up that building anyway, so they did. This has happened. When my friends tell me these things, I trust and believe them. And they did it for the government of Canada because they were ordered to. Anyway, you should all go thank a vet for your freedoms. My grandfather landed in Sicily and walked to Germany. Many other people's grandfathers, I'm in my late 40s, many of my other friends have had grandfathers who fought in World War II, Korea. I have some friends of mine whose family fought in Vietnam because they're dual citizens. And they come back and they're good people. I often think about when I hear that, people calling vets names and vilifying them. I often think back of the Vietnam, the hippies and stuff. How they used to spit on soldiers when they came back. And a lot of these soldiers marched in peace marches because once you see war, peace becomes very important to you. And I know a lot of guys have seen war and all they want is peace and quiet. Most of them just want to be left alone. But our government keeps pushing, vilifying people. And the media is directly responsible for a lot of this. Anyway, I digress. Go thank a vet, buy them a coffee if you see them at Tim Hortons. Most of them be more than happy to sit down and talk at you. Some guys won't, and you'll never get the whole story out of these guys. I had a buddy of mine, Hill, who was an infantry in Afghanistan, multiple tours, and he never talked much about it. he became a weapons tech after a while. But I did see a video of him online, of him and his buddy in Afghanistan behind this wall, and rounds are snapping over their heads, and they're laughing and giggling because people react to stress differently. I laugh when I'm stressed out. You should see me at the dentist. But they were popping up, shooting, going back down, rounds snapping over their heads, and they're laughing and giggling. They jump back up a couple rounds, fire a grenade out. Is he okay? Should he be around weapons? Sure, why not? He's not a threat to anyone or himself. But I'm sure he doesn't talk about, and I worked with him for 2 years. It's just sad when you see someone like that vilified. And, he'll take his memories to the grave with him, most likely. He'll be an old man. My grandfather, when he fought in World War II, the only thing he told me was we always had aircraft overhead. And he said, there's nothing worse than shooting another man, but the other man is also trying to shoot you. And that's all he ever said to me, really, about his war experience. Anyway, I won't keep any longer because I tend to ramble on. It's brain injury. So you folks have a great night. As I said, thank a vet. Buy a vet a coffee when you see him hanging around. And you have a great night. I'll talk to you later.